Good evening, Mono County, and thank you for joining us for the community conversation for July 30th, 2020. My name is Brian Wheeler from Mono County Public Health, and I'll be your host tonight. Tonight we are joined by panelists from the County of Mono, the town of Mammoth Lakes, and I believe Mammoth Hospital. So before we get into our question and answer session, I know Stu has a short presentation for us. So Stu, take it away.
I do. Thank you, Brian. Welcome all the panelists and welcome everybody on this beautiful Thursday, July 30th, 20 weeks into the pandemic, believe it or not. But I know we have a lot of questions out there. We really want to make sure we allow sufficient time for a conversation with the community. So I'm going to keep this presentation very brief. Again, it's going to be available on the Mono Health /coronavirus website for you to peruse at your convenience at a later time. And then we'll certainly post the entire conversation on our YouTube channel, again, on the website. So let's just get to it. No change in the topics today. Again, just want to reassure and encourage everybody to, adopt a shared responsibility perspective. We're all in this together. We have a shared outcome that we're, striving to achieve, and that's the eradication of COVID, and certainly a safe and healthy county. We're going to get through the case statistics update, how we're doing in the last 7 days, the path forward, and a brief community update. Again, stay safe to stay open is our main hashtag theme. Again, it's more than just a hashtag. It's a way of life. It's change of behaviors. It's change of attitudes and actions to beat the virus. Again, you must wear a face cover in high risk situations. No gatherings of any size are permitted in Mono County. And again, we encourage you to showcase your safe practices to keep our local businesses open. Total positive cases by day. This as of today, this afternoon when we pull it off the portal, total positive cases 126. So you can see we have a little bit of a flattening of that curve, which is always a good sign. The 7-day metrics right here. So again, 35 positive cases this last week. You can see we tested 522 people. That's Brian and his team doing an absolutely outrageous job. So thank you, Brian, and your team. So 522, positivity rate of 35. Again, still a high number, but you can see it's slowly plateauing. A positivity rate of 6.7%, which is down from last week's rate of 11.32%. So again, definitely trends in the right direction. And again, our tests, we still have a lot of pending tests. So this is updated daily, and we get these metrics every 7 days from our health team. So that's our positivity rate. This one here just shows you where we are on a positivity rate per 100,000 people. You can see the unincorporated part of Mono County just snuck over the 100 cases per 100,000 at now 174. Mono County is 508, and you can see the Mammoth Lakes at 740 cases per 100,000 people. What this means, Dr. Boo talked about this last week. Again, we are now on the monitoring list. It includes many of the restrictions that I think everybody's familiar with. If you're unsure of what you can and what you can't do, join us on the Path Forward Reopening Mono County page on monohealth.com /coronavirus. So we have a current list of open-closed list of business sectors. And again, this is just some information here that the EOC and the representatives tonight are going to talk a little bit more about. So once you're on the monitoring list, what do you do to get off? Again, you can see the highlighted statement there. These indoor operations shall remain closed, even when a county is removed from the monitoring list, until the state health officer modifies the order and authorizes reopening. So Dr. Boo, our county health officer, will be in contact with the state daily regarding our thresholds and what it means to move off that list. But again, I'm sure we'll answer some more questions on that this evening. Just a few updates. Round 2 of the Town Business Assistance Program opened on Monday. Again, we removed the FTE count or the employee count. So now you just have to have less than $1 million in gross revenue. Again, you can kind of see those bullets there, have a physical commercial storefront, and demonstrate immediate assistance from other sources is inadequate, unavailable, or unlikely to meet your financial needs. And council allocated an additional $100,000 to the rental assistance program. So if you still need assistance for your rent, please contact Mammoth Lakes Housing at the link there or call 934-4740. And again, I know the county is working on a pretty elaborate and extensive program as well that we believe will be rolled out in August. Just a little information on testing. I know a lot of people are being tested. There are a lot of questions about, hey, when do I get my test? Who do I call? What's happening? So we do want to remind everybody that the 211 line, if you do want to call that line, it's certainly a great resource for information if you're not able to utilize the website. But again, you know, to talk to a registered nurse is really if you have symptoms. You know, if you really want to seek testing, you're unsure of your options, that's what that 211 nurse hotline is for. That's available 7 days a week, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. If you're outside Mono County and you have issues dialing 211, we've included the number there for you. If you want to submit a complaint, please visit the website again, and that is COVID-19 help at monoca.gov. And for test results, a lot of people are calling. Don't call the 211 nurse line for test results. Call the Mono County Health Department, 760-924-1830. I'm sure Brian will reiterate on that as well. Leave a detailed message with your name, reason for your call, and contact number. You'll receive a call back. Typically, tests are taking anywhere from 4 to 14 days. So again, don't call 211 for test results. Call our health department. And this slide is our slide that we include on every deck. I'm sure everybody is familiar with these numbers. We have website in English and Spanish. Again, any question that's not answered this evening on the presentation and the conversation, please email covid19help@mono.ca.gov. Town of Mammoth Lakes rental hotline, town code compliance. You got those email addresses there. County COVID-19 violations. Again, email Emergency Operations Center. Be prepared to leave a message. The team will respond to you. And again, our comprehensive daily brief put together by the JIC is every Tuesday and Friday. With that, Brian, I think that's covered all of those presentation, the stats and the details. Really want to make sure we leave sufficient time for everybody's questions this evening. So with that, I'll hand it back to you. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Stu. Before we get into the questions, I noticed we have a fresh face on our panel, and I just wanted to welcome Al Davis, Chief of Police in Mammoth here, who's joining us tonight. So welcome, welcome, Chief.
Thank you. A couple of announcements. We just hired Rick Bellis, excuse me, as a code compliance officer who will work under my agency. So he's going to have several duties working in town. It's going to be parking, it's code enforcement, wildlife and animals, as in licensing and picking up dog poop, stuff like that. Currently, he and Kari are making strong efforts up in the lakes, starting to make strong effort in the lakes basin. And starting this weekend, we're going to have some officers on overtime, you know, trying to help mitigate some of the craziness going on up there. We have people moving bollards and driving up actual trails with their vehicles, doing all kinds of just really wacky stuff. So that's moving forward as we try to help mitigate the large numbers of people we have here in town. So
thank you, Chief Davis, and welcome again.
Thank you.
Lauren, let's get into it. Let's have our first question of the evening.
I have major concerns about businesses allowing employees back to work who are living with someone who has tested positive for COVID-19, spouse, parent, etc. What are the protocols regarding this, and is there any regulation in place to keep this from happening?
Dr. Boo, can you field that question for us?
If I can unmute, sorry. Hi, everyone. Tom Boo. Yeah, so when we do contact tracing, people who share a household with somebody who's positive should be quarantined. They shouldn't be going to work. We don't always have the the human resources to follow up as often as we would like to try to verify that people are following the orders. But somebody who is actually in a household with somebody who's positive should be quarantined, whether in that house or in another place where, where they're safe and not exposing other people. I mean, if there's legitimate, confirmed information of, of such high risk situations, they should be reported to the EOC.
Thank you, Tom. Can we have our next question, Lauren?
The reopening page of the Mono County Coronavirus Response website outlines that Governor Newsom's stay-at-home order remains in effect throughout the state. You could travel for urgent matters or if such travel is essential to your permitted work. Even though businesses around the state are opening up, avoid traveling long distances for vacation or pleasure as much as possible. Given the incredible number of daily visitors in Mammoth Lakes and the lack of initiative on the part of the Unified Command, what more can be done to encourage visitors to follow the governor's order and stay home?
Frank, can you, Chief Freevold, can you field that question for us?
Yeah, I'll get started on it, and I know we have a couple of other panelists who can probably add in as well.
Sure.
So the governor's order, actually from day one of the challenges that we had is that the enforcement arm for the state, CHP, made it really clear that they weren't and really couldn't enforce that order. And so we didn't have a way to actually stop people from coming here directly. There was discussion about closing 203. I assure you, we ran down every legal and administrative route straight to the top of the state, and we're clearly told we couldn't do that either. The best luck we had with limiting the amount of travel here was to actually have the businesses shut down that people would come for. We know that we couldn't keep on that forever. And then when we opened up, really it was June for the town and the county, 1 week apart, opening up short-term lodging. That was really probably the big push for mobility. So it's been a process now of guidelines that we've worked on both with Dr. Boo and the Economic Recovery Branch to make sure that we could get those orders in place in the businesses, support them with Dan and Bob have committed a little bit around $200,000 for consumables and PPE to make sure that those businesses are ready to protect their employees and provide a safe environment for the people that come in to the extent that we can. On the marketing side, I know that Dan and Bob and I were on with MLT this morning, and they had some pretty extensive messaging, if you've not been to their site, on trying to promote responsible visitation, use of the area, et cetera. So Dan, Bob, do you want to pick any part of that up from this morning's meeting and the previous work that you've done with MLT and Mono County Tourism to help send that message for people that are coming here?
Yeah, I can speak to a little bit of that. This is Dan Holler with the town of Mammoth Lakes. We have had discussions with not just Mammoth Lakes Tourism, but also with Mammoth Mountain and the advertising that's going on and looking at elements. And at this point, there's not a lot of what I'd call paid advertising out there. They're not marketing into the LA area magazines or radio or TV or other elements. There is some social media going out, but the marketing efforts have been focused on that responsibility and safe and sustainable type activities. The other side of that has been, as mentioned, trying to really limit some of our areas. We had limits on campgrounds. We opened up lodging in the later part of the opening process and others. Right now, we're having the same discussion on ratcheting back in terms of a little bit into the nightly rental market and trying to limit people in that way. The other thing that we're seeing, and I know we have a number of people in town, the one we really can't limit are those who are second homeowners. They own property here. They're coming up, they're staying in that property. On average, the hotel market, at least in talking to several of them, are running in about the 70% occupancy level on average, or a little less. I'm not sure on the short-term rental side and condos and stuff, but they're probably in that same market as they have a mandatory gap between stays. And so we've stepped up in some areas of that nature with the governor's order. The other thing that we're seeing is a lot of folks from out of California, which that order, frankly, does not apply to, I don't believe, in terms of somebody traveling from think we've seen license plates from as far as New Hampshire. But whether you're coming in from Nevada or coming down from Oregon, Washington that way, or over from Arizona and other places next door to us, we do have a fair amount of out-of-area visitors. The other thing we're seeing is a large number of visitors to the area that really haven't spent time in Mammoth in the summer before, which creates other challenges for us. The other factors pushing on people in town is limited access into Yosemite and also limited access into Red's Meadow. So people aren't as dispersed as they would normally be. So we are seeing more activity in town, we believe, from that. Plus the rental market and purchase market of RVs has skyrocketed this year, and talking to various vendors out there that are, up 300-400% from previous years. So we have a lot of campers, if you will. A lot of those are inexperienced, and so we're seeing a lot of efforts that way out in the forest. We're ramping up that enforcement through the Forest Service. They have been out with their fire patrols and some of their enforcement officers, writing tickets, giving people warnings, trying to really get in front of that. But a certain level of dispersed camping is authorized. It's legal. You can't have fires, and there's some other regulatory elements in there that they are working to enforce. And again, we'll be having some discussions. Do we step in and help them a little bit, either from our law enforcement here in town or working with Mona County Sheriff's Department as well, especially on the dangerous activities, mainly related to fire. Thank you.
Sorry, I was struggling to find my mute button. Would anyone else like to add to that before we move to our next question? All right, Lauren.
Actually, real quick, if I could.
Sure, absolutely. I'm sorry.
I asked Stu on the chat to see if we could put up the link to, I thought this was a good push, something called Mammoth Promise. It's this idea of trying to get out on the messaging. Look, here are the things that we're hoping you'll do while you're here. And I think it really captured the idea that people, when they come to Mammoth, generally, respect the place. They kind of want to be here and embrace it as a local. Everybody likes to be a local in a cool place. And I thought they did a good job capturing those things that are really important to us here locally. And so if you get a chance, I don't know if I can figure out a way to pop it up here, but should be on that MLT site, Mammoth Promise. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. All right, Lauren, do we have any live callers?
Oh, yeah, we do. Our first live caller is Ron Day. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Ron.
Hi, Ron, how are you? You're on mute. There you go.
There you go. I'm on. I want to thank all of you, but I'm not quite sure where most of the tests are coming from. If it's a restaurant, we need to maybe do something different. As far as my reservations, I've been doing this for almost 40 years, and I think we're hanging in there good. But I'm just not sure. The restaurants, the parties and stuff, and the bikes are good for Mammoth. I'm there every day, and I look at all these people with no mask on, and I don't have the answer, but all I'm going to tell you is we've got to do something or we're going to end up in a terrible place.
Yeah, I agree, Ron. We definitely need to, take care of ourselves and, our community. Would anyone like to comment on Ron's comments? All right, so let's go to our next caller if we have one.
Our next caller is David Billingsley. Go ahead and unmute yourself, David.
Hi, David.
Yeah, hi, Dave Billingsley. We're second homeowners in Mammoth Lakes. Our son works there, and daughter-in-law is a nurse at Mammoth Hospital. Hearing a lot from them directly and, following social media stuff. It looks like there's a big problem with dispersed camping, illegal campfires, people leaving feces on a place. I heard you guys talking about vehicles driving on trails. Seen stuff about OHVs in the meadows. And my question is this: has anybody reached out to Congressman Cook or the feds for help in protecting the federal property that borders Mammoth Lakes? Clearly, the federal government is willing to dispatch officers to help protect federal property. We can witness the courthouse in Portland, Oregon, for example. So I'm just wondering if anybody has asked the federal government for help with getting this stuff under control.
Chief Freebolt, can you address that question?
I can get started on it. I'm sure Dan will probably have a couple things to add. So yes, we actually have had frequent conversations with our federal partners. Some of it has been, coordination of land use and timing on access. We've discussed opportunities to do shared resources. The Forest Service relies heavily, especially in an area like this, on a seasonal workforce. And their hiring and onboarding process has been severely limited with their own protocols on COVID-19. So everything has had a late start with their staff. So they're very, very thin on capability. In fact, there's a lot of their law enforcement work that they can't necessarily get to directly. I know throughout California forests, they will have contracts with local law enforcement to assist with some of that. So we do reach out to them regularly. The messaging has been, right now, the only thing I've heard of that they're doing in this capacity is trying to put together teams, regional teams, to go out and help with non-law enforcement tasks. So, targeted crews to go out and really help with trash pickup in certain areas. But they can't stay there for long, and they're a thin resource. I've not actually seen them here, but it was described to us on one of the recent meetings with Inyo National Forest. So we do reach out to them regularly. Their resources are thin. There's limits to what they can provide. And I don't know, Dan, did you want to copy or add anything to that as far as closer relationships between town and the Inyo?
Yes, thank you. We've done two things. Early on, we had some outreach with Congressman Cook's office on just support more broadly in terms of the CARES Act funding and support from that perspective. The federal agencies under the executive branch are under a direct order in terms of their opening phases. They're still in what they refer to as a stage 1 phase, where the direction is for the majority of their staff, to extent possible, is to work from home, to telecommute. Therefore, they haven't opened visitor centers. They haven't done a lot of things that way. The law enforcement on the Inyo, I think there's 3 officers for the forest. One of those is out on a family medical leave. So that leaves 2 law enforcement officers on the Inyo. And then they also have some of their fire-related rangers who go out in terms of fire spotters. They're the ones doing a lot of the ticket writing elements on illegal fires. Their law enforcement is very stretched, but they are writing tickets in where they can. I think last weekend, the primary one spent most of the day over at June Lake near the beach area there. Again, managing issues there, I believe, giving out some citations there as well. So the Forest Service partners are out there, but you're looking at, I forget, it's 3+ million acres or something of forest they're trying to manage. And a lot of that is open to recreation. Dispersed camping in a lot of areas within the Inyo National Forest is not illegal camping. There's some processes for it, but people can go out and do that. So we're balancing that issue of the legal activities with illegal activities throughout this process. And it's an ongoing challenge, and it extends into the town as well in a lot of areas. So it's good coordination is there, but the staffing around the clock there is extremely thin on the forest side as well as the town side.
Hi, Ingrid. Did you want to add to the conversation? I saw you turn your mic off.
I did. So if I could add to that just a little bit, the Forest Service capacity just isn't there. I asked the Ranger Gordon Martin this morning if they had that capacity to check parking at Horseshoe or Coldwater, one in, one out, like they're doing for Reds, and they just don't have that capacity. We do have an issue with dispersed camping and campgrounds in general and people in general, and a lot of it is education and then enforcement, and we are working collaboratively on that. I can tell you that calls are significantly up. Just compared last year, July to this year's July, 5% more in overall calls, which isn't a lot, but in possible hazard calls, which are like your campfires and your fireworks, more than double than last year. Now, mind you, last year we weren't in a fire restriction until mid-July. We've been in fire restrictions since May, so that is a little bit of a difference to factor in. But we are going out there regularly, answering these calls. Law enforcement goes out, Chief Davis's guys go out, guys and girls, my guys and girls go out, the fire departments go out, and we tell people, hey, great, you're camping, do it safely, put out that fire, no fires. And we do that regularly. And I really encourage people to call when they see something like that. I see the occasional Facebook rant about an illegal parking or a fire or something like that. That doesn't do me any good. I'm not looking at your Facebook rants. So you need to call our dispatch. Just call 911 and let us know, hey, there's a campfire that ought not be. Because we're in fire restrictions, and as Frank knows, this is not the time to be having a campfire. So let us know, and don't text me. Don't text Chief Davis. Don't text Frank. Don't text Supervisor Corliss. I might not be able to get my text. You need to call 911 and call the people that can send resources out to do what they need to do.
Thank you, Ingrid. I think Chief Davis, looks like you turned off your microphone. You have a comment?
Yes, I did. We have to keep in mind that law enforcement activities don't stop to just handle the stuff, the parking at the Lakes Basin or the dispersed camping. We still have to enforce speed laws, which everyone knows how fast everyone's going these days. Speed laws, everything else still that is there, we have to enforce. So that comes first. And then if we have the ability, like we're trying to do with Rick Bellis and Kari up in the Lakes Basin and some overtime up there to try to mitigate some of those things. But it's an ongoing process. And like Sheriff Braun said, call 911 to tell people what's going on. And I meant to say this earlier when asked about wildlife. 911, my officers have been, and Ingrid's officers have been responding to bear calls forever. So we have plans in place, and the officers can handle any of those kinds of calls. So 911 is always the best option.
Thank you, Chief Davis. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, Brian, if I can add into this, if you actually have a law enforcement related call, you know, something is really illegal going on in the forest or the fire threat, you can call the Forest Service dispatch. Their number is 760-873-2405. Please do not call for other minor infractions and little things. They're stretched in staff also. But again, if it's an illegal fire, if it's truly something egregious out there, you can call and they'll respond as they have people available. But that's another option there, similar to the 911 call here in Mono County, but the dispatch and the Forest Service can be a resource as well.
Thank you, Dan. All right, Lauren, can we have our next question?
Why are profits being prioritized over health and well-being of low-wage employees? With restaurants being required to test 30% of their staff, you clearly expect workers to be getting COVID, even though we don't know the long-term repercussions of contracting the virus. As a restaurant employee, I feel as though my health is viewed as disposable and profits prioritized over my well-being.
Let's see, who would like to field that question?
Well, this is Dan. I can speak to it, and it's more of a statement, I think. But the real issue there is we're not setting that type of a priority at all. Our goal is how do we keep our economy running so anybody who's working here, not just today, but over the next several months, that they will actually have businesses to work in. So we really do want to be able to balance out our economic side of this with the public health side. We have done a certain testing of folks trying to figure out how widespread this virus is, how much community spread we have. We are encouraging and working with restaurants, several of them, and how do we assist them with the PPE, personal protective equipment? How do we assist them in making sure sick employees are not at work? In some cases, yeah, they are closing down somewhat. Most of them are voluntary. Being able to work through that and trying to make sure that the employees are safe, that they have a healthy work environment, but also ultimately, we do need to have those jobs long-term for the very reason of supporting the workforce in our community. And that goes across beyond restaurants, that goes into the full hospitality range and on up through the contractors and others in office, et cetera, that we need to have that ultimately a healthy economy for the long term. We have throttled it back. We have put limits on it and will continue to do so as we prioritize the public health of our community along with the need for a strong economy and the need for a safe environment.
Thank you, Dan. I believe Dr. Burrows was next in line to comment.
Yeah, I would actually argue that the efforts being made in testing restaurant employees and staff is exactly the opposite of saying that restaurant employees or anyone in the hospital or the hospitality industry are expendable. I think to the contrary, the idea is we don't want you working if you're sick, because we know that if you're sick, you have much higher potential of exposing the virus to other people you work with or you're serving. So I think the attempt is really to try to keep everything as safe as possible and not just open businesses and damn, oh, we're going to stay open no matter what. The idea is to be open and safe, not just to be open.
Thank you, Dr. Burrows. Frank Freebolt, Chief Freebolt, you were next.
Thank you. Yeah, we obviously are all responding to this one. The caller raises a great question. It gets to the core of the difficulty of balancing this incident. In managing it, there's three very distinct things that we're having to balance, and no one of these interests wins out over the other. It is public health first, but if we keep things shut down long enough and we crush the economy, you turn around and create a public health crisis because we don't have the funding to provide the medicine, the clinics, the healthcare support that brings. Also, if we just allow this idea that there's too many people, let's send everybody back. Very few people could ever actually live in Mammoth if there weren't a tourism basis here, unless we're going to do logging or mining. And those are difficult concepts, but the fact is none of those three things, the economy, the local environmental and community experience when it gets crowded, or the public health needs, none of those three can win out over the others at the expense, or we eventually lose all of it. So that's the hard part of this message is, I think if we do it right, we sort of disappoint everybody to some extent, but it's the best path forward. Wish I had a better message, but that's the reality. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. And I believe Rob Patterson, you would like to address this as well.
Yes, thank you very much. I just wanted to touch on the fact that the town has an ambassador program, which is employees of ours that are going out and meeting with each of the businesses. They're touring the businesses, taking a look at the protocols they're putting in place, but we're also handing out things like employee check-in sheets that are supposed to be kept daily, and they involve taking temperatures of employees. And we also provide thermometers if they don't have access to them. So we're trying to partner, as well as the PPE that Dan mentioned earlier, but we're trying to partner in ways that help support proper business and do everything we can to mitigate. We know the virus is going to be in the community, and if we can protect the folks from who are on the front lines from catching it or transferring it to others, then that's the best process possible. So that's our focus and effort, and I think it's a very good one. It's been well received by the businesses, and I want to commend all businesses for the activities and the efforts that they put forth. But I think people are doing everything they can to stay safe.
Thank you, Rob. All right, Lauren, can we have our next question?
When are we going to see enforcement of mask wearing, gatherings, rentals, illegal camping, fires, trash dumping, littering, etc.? I think we are all tired of watching the bad behavior and tired of the town, PD, county, etc. seemingly doing nothing. When will we see some enforcement, and what exactly happens when people don't comply with protocols and health orders?
I think I'll start with Rob on that one, if you're able to address that.
Yeah, absolutely. So part of the EOC, you can call in and leave messages about the things that you're seeing out in the community. And my team picks those up on a 3 times a day. We dispatch individuals that will go out to a location where there seems to be a problem, and they will have conversations about how to remedy that issue. And unfortunately, there's a lot of things that are out there, and people aren't going to necessarily see the activities that are going on, but we're responding to every inquiry that comes in. We have conversations, and then what we do is follow up. So in the coming days, we'll go back out to that unannounced and just see how things are going and see if things have improved. So there's a lot of effort going on in the background, but will you see spot issues here and there? Yes. And, will we see people aggressively being arrested in the street for not wearing masks? No, we won't. And so I think the issue out there is we're doing everything we can, and there is a very strong contingent behind these complaints that come in, and we're taking every one of them serious.
Thank you, Rob. Did anyone else like to add to that? Chief Davis.
Yeah, when it comes to the enforcement of the masks, our response to like bonds where somebody might not be willing to put a mask on is to show up, educate them, and if they still refuse, then they're escorted out and possibly given a citation for trespassing. But that's essentially what we're doing at this point. And in my experience, and I've talked to several other people, I am all over Mammoth in Bonds, Rite Aid, DIY, grocery outlet, and I can't remember the last time I saw someone in any one of those stores that didn't have a mask. So I think the compliance level is way up there, and we have to be careful of social media and rumors and things that are being spread without merit. So,
thank you, Chief. Sheriff Braun.
I don't have a ton to add on that. What Chief Davis said is what I've been saying all along, that we're not going to cite for masks, we're going to cite for the associated crime. So people forget, they slip up, we remind them. Most people are compliant. Some people are adamantly not compliant, and they will commit a crime in the process. They'll trespass, they'll batter someone, they'll interfere with us, they'll cause a scene. We will handle that with the associated crime. But for the most part, I got to tell you, I'm seeing what Al is seeing, is people are being really good. I go into Vons, and maybe it's because I'm in uniform. I do shop in uniform. But people are being good, and to remind people and to give people the opportunity to do the right thing. Now, as for the trash and the parking and the people, we're working on it. I don't have great answers for that, but we are all talking about it. We're working at it. We're looking at solutions for it. And we appreciate the feedback from the community, and we need to keep this conversation going. And we hear you, and we're trying to come up with answers. But we also have to balance the fact that the people are here. They're fleeing the cities. They're going to come here. And if we close down campgrounds and we close down lodging, they're just going to push out further into the forest. They're not going to stop coming. So we need to figure out how we can accommodate their needs and educate them on how to behave properly in our town and to pick up after themselves and leave no trace. So we're working on it, I promise.
Thank you, Sheriff. Lauren, can we have our next question?
Would it be possible for the health department to provide more details from contact tracing, letting us know when we have community spread, or if someone testing positive has been traveling, or if those testing positive are in service industry positions where they have contact with visitors? Most of us are aware that an individual who works at Vons tested positive, but no one said anything publicly.
Dr. Boo, can you address that, please?
Yeah, as far as the, employees in businesses who test positive, we assess to see if we think that there was a significant threat to the public, and if there was, we would consider making a public announcement about it, but we haven't had anything like that lately. Yeah, so let us take your suggestions back to the group, back to the EOC and the Joint Information Commission Center, Jake is Center, Joint Information Center, and talk about what might be feasible. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Boo. Lauren, can we have our next question?
If testing results are taking so long, is there any discussion of test pooling? For instance, test 100% of employees at every hotel and restaurant and combine tests for each location. If you have a negative, the establishment is clear. If there's a positive, all persons would be retested individually. You could fast track those single tests representing each business.
Yeah, I can certainly address that one. We as a health department and those of us who are doing testing aren't making that decision. That would be a decision that the lab and the state would probably put forward. So, I mean, that's not currently being done. And our turnaround times for some of our testing, the hospital, that I'm sure Dr. Burrows will confirm that the times have gotten a little bit better. I know our tests are taking about 2 to 3 days to get results. But no one's currently doing, as far as I know, the pool testing that you speak of. Dr. Boo, I see you turned on your mic, and so did Dr. Burrows, so I'll turn it over to you two.
Okay, go ahead, Dr. Burrows.
Well, I was going to say from the perspective of batch testing, there's certainly some thought about doing it. So just for everybody's information, what that means is that you combine a number of people into one test run. And if one of those persons tests positive, you would potentially then have to go back and test all the people in that group, as the caller or the questioner was suggesting. With respect to the time it takes for the test to get back, a lot of that is out of our hands because it simply depends on how many tests we are submitting to an outside lab. And that's, at least as of right now, and I'm going to say July 30th because August 1st could be a very different answer. If they have too many tests to run, that's going to be the dependent factor on how long it takes to get the result back. So at least right now, the hospital sending tests out versus public health sending tests out, public health is getting a faster turnaround because they're not sending as many tests. And they're sending it to a lab that is not getting flooded with requests. It's not necessarily the hospital volume versus the public health volume. It has everything to do with the lab that it's going to. So the hospital is sending it to, for example, LabCorp. And if LabCorp has to process 20,000 tests, it's going to take longer versus a state lab that may have to process 1,000 tests. You can do the math. It obviously is going to be quicker to do 1,000 versus 20,000. The hospital is in the process of utilizing a test that we can do in-house, not for everybody, but certainly for patients that we're admitting to the hospital, or we have a high clinical suspicion because they're presenting with symptoms, and we're trying to use that information for diagnostic purposes to determine, does that patient, are they infected? And now does that have implications on contacts that they may have that now we have to go out and do tracings? So this is ever evolving. It's not something that is, like I said, something that is going to apply based on July 30th information versus August 1st information. That's where we are with that.
Thank you, Dr. Burrows. A question for you though. I mean, with there being so many cases, does pool testing, I know it was great strategy with HIV, but with the pandemic, with there being so many infections, would that actually be an effective strategy, or would it just create more of a backlog?
I think the answer to both of those is yes. And I'm sorry, that's a confusing answer, but I think if you batch test and everyone's negative, then you have effectively tested, however many people, and you have effectively ruled them all out. If you then have a batch of those things that's now positive, now you go back and look at all of them, and you probably have to individually test each of them. So in the right circumstance, yeah, it's very efficient. It effectively knocks out a whole bunch of people all at once. And at the same time, it effectively puts everyone in the same boat as far as, I don't know which one of you is positive. Now I'm going to have to go back and research all of you.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Burrows. Dr. Boo, did you want to add to the conversation? No, you're good? Okay. Lauren, can we have our next question, please?
Why are we not laying the groundwork for countywide shutdown now and to discourage/prohibit visitation immediately?
Chief
To
Revolt.
stage 2, we were only allowed 1 new case per 10,000 people over 14 days, and the amount of cases we have gotten is way over that.
Chief Revolt, can you address that, please?
Yes, as I understand the question, why aren't we doing any preparation for, additional shutdowns to limit the spread of the virus? And the fact is we do have the groundwork. We have a multi-stage set of strategies. Some of them are containment, some of them are, business sector reductions. There's no single number or indicator that hits that trigger point for anything. It's always in the context of multiple things that are happening at one time. The fact that we wrote an order for the restaurants is indicative of paying attention to the facts on the ground, trying to be surgical where possible, jump all around that infection, and try to use the strategy of containment. If we lose the ability to contain, then there's other strategies that we'll employ, and if we fail at those, we know what that looks like at stage 1. So the groundwork is out there. We obviously can't share all that here, nor is that necessarily appropriate, but that's how we actually came to some of the decisions and actions that we have done. And some people applaud them, and some people, really are unhappy with those. But that's the nature of managing a pandemic.
Thank you, Chief Revolt. Dr. Burrows, you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I was going to say we have, and again, I apologize. This is a complicated issue to deal with, and you have to look at all the circumstances and the context that people testing positive are in. It's one thing if everyone that's testing positive is sick and getting admitted to the hospital and they're going into respiratory failure where they need to be in an intensive care unit on a ventilator, and we are just overwhelmed, we can't take care of everybody. It's another thing altogether if the number of people that are testing is going up, and for the most part, their symptoms are mild enough that they can be managed at home, and they're not getting to the point where we are completely collapsed as far as our ability to take care of them from a healthcare system perspective. Those are difficult decisions and choices to make, but the reality is that this virus, even though it seems like it is wildfire right now and spreading all over the place, the number of people that it has impacted population-wise in the United States is a fraction of the United States population. The reality is, to some extent, and I don't know how else, I'm going to try to be as I guess, correct about this as I can, this virus is going to have to make its way through the population, but we have to be careful about the pace in which it does that. If it comes on like a tidal wave, then we're all going to get destroyed. And if it comes on at a pace that we can adapt to it and react to it and care for people that get sick, we're going to be able to manage it. I mean, the end of the road for this pandemic is probably one of two things. One, we have a vaccine that's very effective and we're able to immunize people so they don't get sick. And the other is that enough of our population gets sick at a pace that we can handle it, that it's not a pandemic anymore, that it's made its way through enough of the population that we feel good about the fact that coronavirus is very much like influenza, that there's a predictable course and we know a certain number of people are going to get it and we can manage it and we can handle it. But the problem with any pandemic, and the influenza included, is if it goes too fast, that's when we wind up seeing collapse of not only healthcare systems, but our economic viability and a lot of unnecessary deaths. And this is all a balancing act. There's no way around that. And there's no great answer or great exit.
Thank you, Dr. Burrows. If I could take a second, I want to circle back to testing and just give an update on public health testing. So we've moved away a little bit from the pop-up testing model that we were doing for many months to lay a baseline of the amount of virus in the community. Recently, we have shifted our resources to accommodate all of the contact tracing and increase symptomatic individuals that we're seeing in town and that are calling the 211 line. Will there be community surveillance testing again? Yes, there will be. I don't have any dates for you right now. We are talking about it and trying to figure out how that's best going to look, and we expect to probably within the next couple of weeks start doing some community testing again. But right now we are focusing on all the ill and symptomatic people that are calling 211, and all the cases that come from tracing the positive cases. So I just wanted to circle back to that to give an update to the community. All right, Lauren, can we have our next question?
Can the MLPD start enforcing no camping in shady rest/sawmill cutoff area? I believe camping is only legal 2 miles outside of town limits and/or 2 miles from developed campground, although this information is very difficult to find, especially for our visitors.
Chief Davis.
So we work with our law enforcement partners with the Forest Service and assist them in any kind of enforcement action that needs to be taken out there. As to the specific locations where you can and can't, I'm not aware of that, but I know we get requests to assist the Forest Service, the 2 LEOs that are law enforcement officers that are out doing things, and that's on a regular basis when they have time and when we have time.
Thank you, Chief. Dan, I see you turned off your mic.
Yeah, the element for that, the dispersed camping is prohibited within the town of Mammoth Lakes. They don't have a boundary amount that I'm aware of in terms of just outside the town boundary. Also, there's other limits based on the availability of developed campgrounds as well. And then there's a distance limit off of paved roads. I'm not sure there's a distance limit off of the dirt roads. But there is some other requirements in terms of how you disperse camp, and that's on the Forest Service website. If you look up under I think it's under camping related to the Inyo National Forest, you go there and you get information on camping and on dispersed camping, and they have a write-up on the restrictions that are in the processes that are on their website.
All right, thank you, Dan. Lauren, do we have any call-in questions?
Yes, our next call-in caller is Sasha. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Sasha.
Hi, Sasha.
Am I unmuted? Hello?
Hi.
Hi, so my question concerns masks being worn outside. I'm not certain, inside they're being worn, that's fine, but those, the risk is also available outside. When people are outside, they're walking around out of doors. They're not wearing masks. As soon as they come outside of Vaughn's or the market, they're walking up and down Mammoth Road. They're running. The rate of transmission for an unmasked asymptomatic person to transmit to a masked negative person is higher than both people wearing masks. And I'm concerned that nothing is being enforced outside. No one is reminding them that this risk still occurs. There's still a threat out of doors. Everyone's like, oh, we're inside. And now, all the advertising and the tourism says, come up here and breathe the mountain air. What can be done to protect people and to remind everyone that the masks need to still be worn outside?
Let's see, can I start with Rob Patterson?
I actually think that's a Dr. Boo question, is with regard to requirements of masks outside.
I think there was also an enforcement component to the question, but sure.
Yeah, I can jump in on the enforcement, and it's not much different than what we talked about before.
Sure.
Although on an individual basis, a little more challenging if someone is seen out there. But if there's large groups or some folks that are out there, we've had a few calls about some running groups in town and such, that we've had to go, have conversations with them. And like I said, we have field personnel that are out there that we dispatch to meet with them and have those discussions and talk about running separately and those types of things. But it's really kind of the same enforcement efforts that they're putting forward.
Thank you, Rob.
Quickly, Brian,
Yeah.
Just jump in from recreation. So Mammoth Lakes Trail System and their team have placed, signage at each of the trailheads. So, if anybody's utilizing a trail system, running on those multi-use paths and so forth, There's A-frame signage, pretty extensive signage there at each of our trailheads outlining, the responsibility of using those trails and to wear face covers, if you're not able to maintain that 6-foot distance. So again, there is signage out there. Clearly, it's probably not enough and we need to do more, but that was my comment as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Stu. I think Dr. Boo and then Dr. Burrows would like to comment.
Well, sure. I mean, Tom Boo again. I was just going to say that clarify that the orders from the state and the local order basically mirrors the state order. It does not require masking outdoors if you're able to maintain your distance from other people. And again, that minimum distance is 6 feet from people who are not a member of your same household unit. So in crowded outdoor recreational areas like the Eastern Sierra, town of Mammoth Lakes, trail systems, yeah, it's definitely sort of best behavior, courteous to allow people 6 feet of distance or put a face covering on if you're hiking and meeting people. But honestly, those of us in public health are not nearly as worried about outdoor transmission as indoor. It certainly can happen if distance isn't maintained. But if you appropriately maintain distance, the chance of outdoor transmission is probably very, very small.
Thank you, Dr. Boo. Dr. Burrows.
Yeah, I was going to add that, like Dr. Boo said, the transmission outdoors with correct distancing, with or without a mask, we know that to be much less. And no, it's not impossible. And certainly we are concerned about people congregating or big groups gathering outside. I mean, I've also seen people coming up here in running groups. I'm sure some of the cross-country teams that typically come here every summer are clearly still here running, and they're running in clusters like they always do. That is a bit of a concern. We did put out effectively a public service video on the Mammoth Hospital website, and I believe it's on the community website as well, as far as how to recreate safely outside. So certainly, if you're on a trail by yourself, you don't need to wear a mask. And probably, if you're hiking and there's one person coming the other direction and you move far enough away, yes, it would be great if you put a face covering on when you're passing each other, but the distance is probably sufficient. I'm not going to say that's good, do it by yourself. The concern is when you do have big gatherings. So if you decide you're going to do some sort of a picnic event, you have a ton of people that aren't your household unit, that's when you're going to have the problem with transmission. But being outside, look, we've talked about this. The reality is that everyone's going stir crazy. That's part of the reason we're seeing so many people here in the first place. We want you to be outside and be mentally stable and feel like you can do something. But like anything else, please be mindful of how many people are around you. If you have to wear a mask because there's too many people around, then wear a mask, or don't be part of that group because there's too many people. These are things that are much more difficult to enforce because you are outside and you're at a park or a trail or somewhere where it's not a public area per se, like it would be in the grocery store or the hardware store or one of the post offices or someplace where clearly there's going to be people around you. So yeah, please go back and look at that video and be mindful of that when you're out. If you're in a big group outside, there is more risk. The caller is absolutely correct in that.
Thank you, Dr. Burrows. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this evening. I'd like to thank all the panelists for being here this evening. And until we see each other again, take care of yourselves and each other. Good night, Mono County.